Weekly Spooky is brought to you by our generous supporters on Patreon. Get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and more for as little as $1 a month when you go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on the Patreon link. Your support has gotten us to 100 episodes, so join up today and help us create another 100 and beyond. Head over to WeeklySpooky.com and join the Patreon.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
My friends, it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly, and a very happy Groundhog Day to you all. But don't worry, we'll get to the true meaning of Groundhog Day in just a moment. But first, I want to say a big thank you for listening to the show, and I hope you enjoyed our 4-parter Prom Queen Killer, which wrapped up last week. Well, we're heading back to Strickfield for one more week of terror, and while you're listening to this, I'll be holed up in a cabin in northern Michigan, probably a little on the cold side, and hopefully, what sanity I do have left will remain intact. But that's to be seen. If you want to show a little support for the show, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast app and leaving a 5-star review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you love to get your shows. It helps us immensely. It doesn't cost you anything, and I sure am thankful for it. And if you want to take one step beyond that, you can go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on Patreon and join 84 other folks who are supporting the show every month for as little as $1 and getting exclusive content, videos, photos, and audio. Everything you need to make it to the next Wednesday. So head over there, take a look. I really do appreciate it. But now, my friends, there's a cold chill in the air. The snow is falling. It's beautiful, but it's isolating. Your car's wheels can't spin. Your toes freeze and make you unable to walk. The snow even absorbs your screams as you let them out. Your only hope is to warm by the fire and listen now. The Truth About Groundhog Day by Rob Fields. February 2nd, 1821. Hollow Point was established 1 year ago on this date. It was a small farming village where most everyone greeted each other with courtesy and friendship. This was an ideal place to raise kids or crops. Hollow Point had all of the basic essentials. For education, there was a one-room schoolhouse that serviced every grade level. There were stores and markets that serviced most everyone's needs from food to tools. The village hall was the biggest building on the square. The constables occupied a small building next door to it. There was also a library and a few small inns for food and rest. On this day, a festival was being held to celebrate the first-year anniversary of Hollow Point, and it was on this day that she had come. During the festival, as Mayor Jeffrey Mirren was standing on the gazebo and giving his speech to commemorate the anniversary, a beautiful young woman approached the village square, dressed all in black. She wore a dress with a flowing skirt and a long cape that flowed down her back evenly. In her hands, she cradled a brown adult groundhog. When the mayor caught sight of her, all of the other villagers turned to look at her. She stood at least 50 feet away as she gazed upon them, hatefully. "Hear me, People of Hollow Point, and hear me well, the woman said boldly. Today, you celebrate the birth of your village. Prior to the birth of Hollow Point, you and yours alike drove many of our people from our land. Hardly any of you showed regret for the terrible wrongs you have done. Why should we show any regret, girl? Mayor Mirren asked just as boldly. A petition was received stating a need for new land due to the overcrowding in our neighboring village of Strickfield. By rights, this land was ours to begin with. It was left to us by our forefathers. Your forefathers? The woman replied bitterly. Was that the lie you told your people to get them to drive us from our land and kill us? Your forefathers had nothing to do with our land. It was in our family long before Columbus himself journeyed to this country. You sought to drive us from our land so that you could build this pitiful village. And with the help of some of these people here, you did so. I recognize their faces. It was you and your followers who violently put our people to death in order for there not to be any opposition to you. You had your way, and your village would be built. And today, you celebrate the birth of it. Wait a minute, one of the men cried. I know who she is. That's Greta Finney, the daughter of Helia. A witch! Greta Finney chuckled. Yes, and can you tell me what else happened the day you established your village, fool? We burned your mother at the stake for her evil. What's to keep us from doing the same to you, Greta Finney? Mayor Mirren retorted. Greta held up the groundhog for all to see. This! The mayor and the rest of the villagers laughed at her. Despite this, Greta Finney stood her ground. They were playing right into her hands, and she knew it. She also knew that the time had now come for the citizens of Hollow Point. Greta Finney continued to stare hard upon them. Gaze upon this groundhog, fools. Gaze upon him well, because from this day forward, your very lives, as well as those of your descendants, shall depend upon him. You and yours alike drove us from our homes and murdered us so that you could build your precious village. You murdered our people because of who we are. Only I now live. You think Hollow Point is your pride? I say it is both your prison and your tomb. From this day forward, none of you shall ever again leave the boundaries of your village. Greta's eyes shifted from their hazel color to bright red. Then her eyes and those of the groundhog began to glow. She looked to the sky. Hear me, Dark Mother. I, Greta Finney, daughter of Helia Finney, invoke thee. These mortals have stolen from our people and built wrongfully upon that which did not rightfully belong to them. These mortals have spilled the sacred blood of our people in doing so. Hear me, Dark Mother. I curse these people who have done evil unto us. I curse the land they now inhabit that was once ours. I decree that the lives of these mortals and of their descendants are to be bound to this groundhog of which I now hold and offer to you. The winds began to blow slightly. Then they gradually increased until the citizens were forced to hold their own hats and bonnets to their heads. Greta's cape began to flow in the windy breezes. She continued her chanting. The shadow of this groundhog shall be decided with the mystic number of 6. 6 consecutive years upon this date that this groundhog sees his shadow shall bring your wrath down upon them. Unless one among either their number or of their descendants comes forward and offers payment of their lives to you willingly. A payment fit only unto you, Hellweaver. Furthermore, anyone who should dare to leave this village, which I now curse, shall be forbidden from ever doing so." The winds blew even harder now. Some of the villagers were forced to grab onto something in order to keep their ground. Many hats and bonnets now flew in different directions. The children were so terrified that they screamed and cried. Greta still held her position. Her cape flowed wildly behind her now. Both Finny's eyes and the Groundhog's glowed even brighter. "As all ties to this curse fall upon this Groundhog," she screamed, "he shall be immortal upon this earth until either he sees not his shadow upon this day for 6 years, or when the last citizen or descendant of Hollow Point dies. This is my curse, Dark Mother. I invoke thee. I invoke thee." She finished at the top of her lungs. "I invoke thee!" Suddenly, a bolt of red lightning struck the Groundhog. To the surprise of the villagers, neither the Groundhog nor Greta Finney were harmed. Greta herself wasn't even moved from where she stood. The Groundhog appeared to be different now. Its fur was tinted brimstone, and its eyes glowed crimson red. The winds began to die down until the weather was as normal as it had been before Greta Finney had arrived. She lowered her head to face the villagers. "It is done, fools of Hollow Point," Greta said. "From this moment on, you shall never again leave the boundaries of your accursed village." "What have you done, Greta Finney?" Mayor Mirren shouted at her. "Are you that ignorant, Jeffrey Mirren?" Greta retorted. "You would be advised to hear me well, for the rest of your lives and those of your descendants depend upon it." She held out the Groundhog. "He is the key to the curse. As long as he does not see his shadow for 6 consecutive years upon this very day, you shall continue to prosper. The only way that you may be spared from your fate is that he does not." "And what if he does?" a frightened woman stammered. "If he does, then you shall all suffer the wrath of the Dark Mother. And believe me, you would sooner die first than face the Hellweaver herself. All of you. The only way to avoid this fate is for one or more of you to willingly offer your lives to the Hellweaver. Upon 6 straight years of the Groundhog not seeing his shadow, you shall all be free from my curse. The reason I have so granted you this favor is because there were a select few of you who had decent hearts. It was those few who fought for the freedom of my family before they were either banished or killed by you." She lowered the Groundhog and released it. It just stood in front of Greta and looked at the villagers. The mayor pointed to the cursed creature. "Capture that Groundhog!" Greta just laughed. "And what would you do with it upon capturing it? Kill it? You cannot. I have seen to that. Now, if you will excuse me, my task here is finished. Enjoy your pitiful village. You only have the remainder of your lives." She paused. "Or until 6 consecutive years of Groundhog's shadow on this day have passed." "We will kill you for this, Greta Finney!" another citizen shouted. "Lay a finger upon me, any of you, and you shall truly know what it is to suffer. I am protected by the Dark Mother herself, and you will all die where you stand." She looked down at the Groundhog. "Away with you." As the Groundhog turned and ran away quickly, the mayor shouted, "Capture that Groundhog!" Some of the villagers quickly ran after it. The mayor looked to Greta again. "You shall pay dearly for this, Greta Finney." Finney smirked. "I seriously doubt that, Mayor Jeffrey Mirren. Now, I take my leave of you." She wrapped herself in her cape and laughed scornfully as she disappeared. Groundhog Day. The present. It was late Saturday afternoon as the four girls crossed into the village of Hollow Point. They explored the village, taking pictures on their smartphones and being excited about their first experience in a ghost village. When it got to be dark, they built a campfire in the village square and began to prepare a meal from food they had brought. Leslie Meacham was tending to the food. Connie Damien was sitting with her back against the gazebo. Cynthia Andrews was sitting on a picnic table. Next to her was Gretchen Sable. Gretchen decided to invite her new friends from Strickfield University, who were all too eager to accept her invitation, especially when they knew they would have a whole village all to themselves. And now here they were. When the food was ready, they began their feast. "Hey, Gretch, where did you say your parents were going for their vacation?" Connie asked. Gretchen seemed surprised. "You mean I didn't tell any of you?" "No," Cynthia replied. "You just told us they would be gone all day today and all night tonight. Then they would come by the university to see you tomorrow evening." "That's right," Gretchen agreed. Leslie leaned forward and gazed at her intently. "So where are they already?" Gretchen laughed. "Would you believe Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania?" "Are you serious?" Cynthia asked in surprise. "Yeah," Gretchen answered. "How do you think I was able to text all of you about Punxsutawney Phil seeing his shadow? Mom and Dad called me earlier this morning and told me. They were at the annual Groundhog Day celebration. They even saw Punxsutawney Phil in the fur." "Yay, 6 more weeks of winter," Connie muttered. "Yeah, like you can complain," Gretchen returned. "You three are attending Strickfield University on full-ride scholarships. You all can afford to go on spring break next month. Some of us have to make coffee at the bitter end in Wilder Hall to help pay for school." Connie raised her hands. "Hey, Gretch, come on, it ain't like that." "No, you're our friend," Cynthia agreed, "and we haven't made any plans to go on spring break." "I know I could actually stay in Strickfield for my break," Leslie said. "It's such an awesome town. Face it, Gretch, you're stuck with us." Cynthia took one of Gretchen's hands. "Come on, honey, we're friends here. You're our friend. We're here for the night in this village we've got all to ourselves. You're fine. We're here to have fun, so let's pull together here and have some fun, okay?" Gretchen nodded. "Okay, I'm sorry about what I said. Anyway, I was just messing around." "Well, that groundhog definitely made the right prediction about 6 more weeks of winter," Leslie muttered as she shivered. "It's cold out here." "Well, we've got our fire and our sleeping bags to keep us warm," Connie reminded her. Then she had an idea. "Hey, we could tell scary stories. We are in a ghost village, right?" Gretchen raised her finger. "And I've got the perfect one to start us off. You girls want to hear something about Groundhog Day? Something you won't believe?" "What?" Connie asked. "How Groundhog Day really got its name," Gretchen revealed. "Duh, Gretch, everybody knows about that," Leslie replied. "It's why we celebrate it, you know, the longer winter and early spring stuff." Gretchen shook her head slowly. "Nope. Far from it." "Huh?" the other girls uttered in wonder. Gretchen just looked at their disbelieving faces. "What part about what I just said didn't you understand? Are you saying that Groundhog Day is totally something else?" Cynthia asked. Gretchen pointed to her sharply. "Hey, you win the prize." "Oh, come on, Gretch," Connie muttered. "What do you claim to know about Groundhog Day that the rest of this country don't?" "More than the rest of this country," Gretchen cracked. She became serious then. "Everything I know, I learned here at Hollow Point." "This place here?" Cynthia asked. "This village about 5 miles from Strickfield? This village that's supposed to be cursed? Haunted, maybe?" Gretchen finished for her. That's right. But how would you find that information here? Leslie demanded. There's an old log in the village hall, Gretchen pointed to it. Right over there. Let's go look at it then, Connie suggested. We're here for the night. This village is all ours. We might as well explore it more. I like that idea, Cynthia said. Show us the log, Gretch. When Gretchen stood up, the others followed her lead. They walked to the old town hall building and went in. They went into the mayor's office. Gretchen sat at the desk and had the others gather around. This is the log, she said pleasantly, pointing to a large, thick, hardbound book. The cover had the words, "The Colony of Hollow Point, established 1820, embedded into it. What do you think? Gretchen asked. Cynthia reached her hand out and felt the cover. It's definitely old leather, that's for sure. What? You don't believe me? Gretchen demanded. I never said that. Gretchen pointed at her. But you sounded like it. Cynthia shrugged. Well, it's just that it's all so unbelievable, that's all. Gretchen lowered her finger. And yet, we're all here, aren't we? For a moment, nobody said anything. I'll show you what I found, Gretchen said, and opened the log. Yeah, Connie agreed with the same excitement. Gretchen slowly turned through the log's aged pages. The entries were all handwritten and were still readable. Try to find where the curse starts, Connie said. I'm trying, Gretchen replied, flipping through the pages. I just have to remember what page it's on. Hey, wait, here's something. Gretchen pointed at a paragraph on one page where mention of the curse was. After Gretchen read the entry, she turned back the pages to try to find where the first entry of the curse was. Hey, I remember now. February 2nd, 1821. Yeah, right here. The others leaned in close as Gretchen read the pages about how a young witch by the name of Greta Finney had cursed the village on that day. Wow, how long have you been coming out here and reading this? Connie asked. Mom and Dad let slip about this village while they were talking to me about their trip, so I decided to find it. When I got here, I explored. I found this log and read some of it. Then Leslie had an idea. Go to the last entry. Let's see if it says what happened to the people. Gretchen quickly turned the pages until she found the final entry. February 2nd, 1986, she murmured. Wow, that wasn't too long ago. They all read the entry in the log to themselves. My brother Gary and I, John Mirren, are among the last remaining survivors in Hollow Point. The Hollow Point Groundhog has again seen his shadow for the 6th consecutive year. That means the curse of the witch, Greta Finney, will be realized once again. The curse will bring the Hellweaver herself in time. Our village only has around 28 people remaining, counting Gary and I. My brother and I are going to offer ourselves to the Hellweaver, who will soon arrive to ravage the village. From this entry, someone else must continue the log of Hollow Point, assuming any of us survive the Hellweaver. When I think about what my ancestors did to build this accursed village, it makes me just want to go back to the exact moment in time and beg Greta Finney to spare the remaining people and take me instead. But Greta Finney is probably long since dead by this time. It is also my shame to say that I and my brother are both descended from the first mayor of the village, Jeffrey Mirren. He was instrumental in putting nearly all of the witches who once lived peacefully here to death, with the exception of Greta Finney. I can only hope that after tonight the curse of Greta Finney will finally be lifted and the rest of the population can go on living in peace. I now conclude my final log entry here. Mayor Jonathan Mirren, February 2nd, 1986. Whoa, Connie uttered. This is really intense. Definitely, Leslie agreed. Wait a second, Hollow Point's abandoned now, Cynthia recalled. If what the mayor here said is true, then how... That was going to be the second part of the story I was going to tell all of you, Gretchen answered. Tell us then, Connie cried. Gretchen stood up and closed the book. Let's go back to the fire. Yeah, good idea, Cynthia consented. It is chilly. The girls left the town hall and went back to the comfort of their campfire. As soon as they were all situated, Gretchen began. Okay, as I said, we already know the first part of the story. So what did this Greta Finney do to the village? Connie asked. Remember the part in the final log about the Hollow Point Groundhog? Yeah? Greta Finney had the groundhog in her hands when she put the curse on the village. She called upon the Dark Mother herself, Hellweaver, to grant her the curse. The groundhog was the focal point of it. If the Hollow Point Groundhog saw his shadow for 6 consecutive years on February 2nd, then the Dark Mother would appear in this village and unleash their hellish wrath upon the people who lived here. But if he didn't see his shadow for 6 straight years, then the curse would be lifted. The curse would also be lifted when the last surviving citizen of Hollow Point died. Not only that, those who lived in Hollow Point at the time couldn't leave whatsoever, and neither could their descendants. She raised her finger. However, it turned out there was a loophole. What loophole? Cynthia asked. Well, not a loophole to end the curse itself, but one that would allow descendants to not have to be in the village, Gretchen said. The people living here couldn't leave the village, but there was nothing in the curse about outsiders. They could come and go as they pleased. There were women who came through Hollow Point and became romantically involved with the men here. They became pregnant and had their babies outside the village. Whoa, so what happens to them? Connie asked. Well, supposedly the groundhog still exists because descendants still exist, Gretchen answered. That was in the log too, about midway. Hey, what about just killing the groundhog? Leslie asked suddenly. Gretchen shook her head slowly. Greta Finney fixed it so it couldn't die. The villagers tried to kill it and failed at every turn. Hey, I just thought of something, Connie exclaimed. How would the people know if the groundhog saw his shadow or not? The log mentioned how the village had a bad storm, snow or rain, just after the groundhog saw it. If he didn't see it, the weather would go on as normal. Of course, there were never 6 consecutive years the Hollow Point Groundhog didn't see his shadow. Getting back to my story, Jeffrey Mirren saw the area as good building land. The only problem was that a coven of witches lived here. To make this part of the story short, he was able to get enough followers behind him to help him drive the witches from this land. On Jeffrey Mirren's orders, they even shot and killed them when they protested. On the first day of Hollow Point, the remaining witches came into the village to try to wreck it, in determination to get revenge for the deaths of their kind and being driven off their land. But the villagers were able to kill many of them. What few that remained were captured and hung that very night. One of them was Helia Finney, but she wasn't hung. She was burned at the stake. That must explain Greta, Leslie figured. Right, Gretchen confirmed. From there, you know the rest of the story. Greta Finney, the last of her coven, came back a year later and invoked her revenge by cursing the village, thus creating the Hollow Point Groundhog. Okay, but what happened in 1986? Cynthia cheered in anticipation. Simple story there, Gretchen replied. John's brother Gary was secretly practicing the dark arts. He was determined to use his powers to drive the Dark Mother away. See, he'd been practicing over the years and was learning powerful magic. His idea was to confront the Hellweaver head on. Well, if Hollow Point is a ghost village, then that means Gary Mirren must have failed, Connie deduced. That's right, Gretchen confirmed. His brother tried to convince him to stop, but he wouldn't listen, and when the Hellweaver came, she immediately destroyed him. She was far too powerful, and he never even stood a chance against her. John Mirren tried to offer himself to Hellweaver, but Gary must have pissed her off so badly that she also destroyed him and the remaining 26 people who lived in Hollow Point. From that moment on, Hollow Point was a ghost village. The curse was believed to have ended that night, once and for all. As far as how Groundhog Day became so big in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, again, outsiders could pass through Hollow Point. Some must have caught wind of the curse. Anyway, one of them was from the Punxsutawney area and was able to get the people to start observing the traditions in 1887, calling this day Groundhog Day. Only difference was that the story of the curse was watered down to predict either 6 more weeks of winter or an early spring. You know, something fun to look forward to once a year. Gretchen finished. Now that was a story, Cynthia exclaimed in approval. Yeah, Leslie agreed. And it's all true, every word of it, Gretchen murmured. Hold it. I've got a question, Gretch, Connie said with skepticism. What? Gretchen replied in anticipation. If the log only goes up to February 2nd, 1986, then how would you know what happened after the last entry was made? Gretchen smiled. I'm so glad you asked. Then her gentle smile became a more sinister, evil smile. Gretchen began to laugh. The winds began to grow stronger. Suddenly, Gretchen floated off the ground to a standing position. The others gasped when they saw the face that was once Gretchen Sable replaced by that of Greta Finney. She still looked as young and beautiful as she did the day that she had cursed Hollow Point on February 2nd, 1821. Now do you understand? Greta asked scornfully. Because I was the one who cursed this foul village. The girls were too scared to run. They huddled together and looked up at her. What do you want? Connie stammered. Greta chuckled. Why, nothing. I already have the 3 of you. You see, you are the last remaining descendants of Hollow Point. Using my ancient magics, I was able to find the descendants who remained. Getting you here was so very easy with the free ride scholarships to Strickfield University. And now the 3 of you will see my curse to its end. You 3 shall remain here for the remainder of your days. Why would you do this to us? Cynthia cried. Greta looked even more hateful now. Why? Because your ancestors destroyed every one of my people all those years ago, leaving me as the sole survivor. Her eyes began to glow red and bright. But don't worry. You 3 won't be alone. You'll have my precious pet here to keep you company. Greta pointed, and the girls looked to see the Hollow Point groundhog. Its fur was as dark as brimstone, and its eyes glowed as evilly red as its creators. You 3 shall remain here and see my curse to its end. Then, only then, will the souls of my people finally rest. She laughed an evil laugh. You have only until either the rest of your natural lives or until my little friend here brings about the Hellweaver. From there, one of you will have to offer her life to appease her. She raised her finger. However, this groundhog may not see his shadow for 6 consecutive years. Then, you will be free. So I've given you hope. You can't do this, Connie shouted. We treated you as our friend. Greta fired twin beams from her eyes to strike Connie down. Then she said to them, I don't need your friendship. You may wish to try and make friends with this groundhog because he'll be all that you'll see for years to come, unless outsiders come into this village, that is. Having fulfilled my revenge with you 3, I take my leave now. With that, Greta Finney disappeared. The remaining 3 girls turned and tried to leave Hollow Point. As they reached the boundary, they found themselves blocked, as if by an invisible barrier. We can't leave, Leslie cried. We're really stuck here, Connie groaned. Cynthia gasped as she turned around. The other 2 girls turned with her to see the evil groundhog standing before them. Its eyes glowed red as it looked at them. It made no move to attack them, however. But then, it really didn't have to. As Greta Finney had told them, they were now permanent residents in Hollow Point. Until such time. I personally never believed you could trust those little fat rats known as groundhogs, so I feel vindicated. I hope you enjoyed that story. I thought it had a great taste of urban legend horror that hits the spot just right. I hope you're all having a truly excellent week, and that I, in the wilds of Michigan, have not turned into a total maniac, or at least if I have, someone will be around to tell the tale. Remember, if you love what we're doing, leaving a review can make a huge difference on any podcast app or even on YouTube. You can also send us an email at WeeklySpooky@gmail.com. And a humongous thank you to the 84 of you backing us on Patreon right now and allowing me to bring the spooky every single week with a little bit of help. So if you want to join up right now for as little as $1 a month, just go to WeeklySpooky.com and click on Patreon. And speaking of which, I want to say a huge thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters. Those are folks who pay just a little extra every month to hear their names on the show. We have Christopher Sullivan, Gino Lyons, Karen Wiemet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, and Kevin Fry. Thank you all so much. And remember, we're at 84 Patreon backers. I want to see us make it to 100 this year. It would mean a lot to me. So if you enjoy the show, please do consider contributing if you can afford it. I really do appreciate it a whole lot. And don't worry, my friends, we'll be back next Wednesday with a truly heinous and gory story just for Valentine's Day. Because have a heart, right? So make sure you don't miss that one next week. Same time, same channel. And I appreciate it. So for our executive producer, Rob Fields, for our producer, Dan Wilder, and for our composer, Ray Mattis, I will talk at you next week. But until then, stay warm, but also stay spooky. Later.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me. Ha 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 ha!